My pleasure to welcome Peter Lewinski today, and welcome Peter, and thank you for accepting our invitation. Peter is a PhD in consumer behavior obtained from University of Amsterdam, and after that he developed a very successful career in industry, and I think it's good to now give the floor to Peter so he can tell us the story and tell us why he chose this subject for his PhD, and what is he doing right now, and how to be successful in industry. So thank you, Peter, and please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Natalia, for a nice introduction. Also, thank you very much for having me here. Yes, I picked consumer behavior because we already discussed this a little bit before the webinar. I have this a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit, such as, for example, Natalia. So I thought that studying consumer behavior marketing will give you a good understanding of how the businesses work. So before that, I studied psychology, but when I started my PhD at the University of Amsterdam, at the same time, I also started to study law, a 5-year degree online, to focus on 2 aspects. One is the commercial side, and another one, which is very important if you are a researcher or technologist, are the privacy aspects. So when I was doing my consumer behavior research, I also was doing my law degree in those 2 areas. And after graduating from PhD here, I went on the typical academic career. So I went for a postdoc in Switzerland in the Department of Economics, where I continued my line of research. But then being there, and this is how I moved 100% to industry, there an ING bank wrote to me if I would like to interview for a position in Poland. And I started interviewing, and I can tell you that in a second, how it went in ING in the bank. But I think what they liked were those 2 aspects. So that I had a couple of different backgrounds in education. But what's also important, I think, is that during my PhD, I also was working at the same time in a firm, in a computer vision firm in Amsterdam. So it really helps when you are doing a PhD that you are getting maybe some extra internships, or if you even some people can work. Those are so-called industrial PhDs. That was kind of my PhD, thanks to the Marie Curie actions. So what they did, the Marie Curie funding, I think it's an important point which Jacob already asked. So what the nice thing there was that I was sponsored by the European Commission, and the money went to the firm. So they were paying my salary, while I had a dual appointment, a second appointment at the University of Amsterdam, when I was not paid by the university. They were just reimbursing the costs. So thanks to this, I had a full-time contract in the firm, and I was doing my PhD there. So then when I was applying to ING, I already had formally 3 years of full-time experience in a firm in computer vision, data science, research, R&D, and that's something which definitely banks are and were interested. And then with the education, it was quite an easier sell to jump the board 100% to industry. So that's one of my takeaways until 2017. Since the start of my studies, I always was studying and working at the same time. So if you can kind of combine those 2, maybe not, at least at some degree, then it's much easier to understand what industry side is and how you can jump the ships if you want to, and if it is something for you.
If I can have a remark, I think it's also depending on what you study, because I'm not sure if in every PhD you are actually able to do that, because at least I think Jacob will agree with me here. At least in neuroscience, in human neuroimaging, PhD programs, PhD students often take much more than 40 hours per week to do their job. So sometimes it's like 60 or 70 hours. It's really working around the clock. So I cannot, for myself, I cannot imagine that I could still have a side job in that circumstances. And I think this is really very dependent on what you do.
Yeah, so that's a common counter argument which I heard many times. But there is also another counter argument to this. that actually you can really speed up your thesis if you work in the industry, which values R&D and research. So that's what happened to me. I was publishing papers, many of them, and much more than the average, than the requirement and the average of people who were doing PhD at the University of Amsterdam, thanks to the support from the firm and to the funding. So, for example, I had many assistants. I had 6 interns who were helping me with my studies, and they are co-authors on the papers. The firm sponsored a lot of things, including software and visits and whatnot. And okay, that's my case. Yeah, exactly. The symbiosis is the key and the synergy. But I also know many people, for example, in the UK, in Oxford, they're doing their PhD in neuroscience too, and they work in places like because like Samsung or Facebook or Microsoft, maybe not immediately, but later in their career. I also know people, for example, from law, who advise, European Central Bank or whatnot. Their advisors have consulting jobs. So I think the key is really to have this conversation. If you can do this, for example, Facebook approached me after the PhDs, but what they are really interested in is that you publish under their name. And we are actually co-authors on a paper when one of our co-authors is publishing in Google, right? So if you can start this journey a bit earlier, then you are in the firm, but you do what you are supposed to do for your PhD.
Well, that sounds amazing. That's actually, I didn't really think about it this way. So that's great. Okay, so so did you now tell us everything that happened up to this point, or there's still something to the story, right? Because now you have a really interesting combination of jobs. So I would like to also hear more about how did you arrive at this,
Yeah, definitely. So about this combination, of industry and academia. So until 2017, I was doing both pretty much. So when I went to Switzerland for a postdoc, I didn't resign from my computer vision firm, but I actually negotiated that I can work for them 1 day a week. So I was doing my postdoc and continuing working on R&D again within the firm. So, and then I could publish this. So that was pretty amazing under double affiliation. And then I got hired by ING in Poland. So I moved, before I was living in the Netherlands, in other countries, and from Switzerland I moved to Poland. Because I also just was curious to see how it's to work in my native country. But then what happened? I really didn't want to resign from the academia yet. So I applied for an open position of the Assistant Professorship in Koźmiński University. And that, I got this position as a full-time, tenure-track professor in a very good business school, because I told them I did it in the past. I told them, look, I'm going to maintain my full-time position in ING and I'm going to work for you full-time, but it's not like I'm just doing this, out of whim or it's not realistic. I did that abroad in the Netherlands and in Switzerland. And they were like, okay, well, look, yeah, we can try. So I had to negotiate with the ING a special waiver that they were fine with this. They said, yeah, okay, well, you can do it, no problem. And then I went on doing that, publishing and teaching. Of course, again, everything is about the negotiation, because a standard teaching load in Koźmiński, I think, is like 150 or 160 hours per year. I don't remember anymore. But when you are young, everything is up for negotiation, right? So, for example, in that university, you had so-called special research status, which meant that if you publish enough high-impact papers, you could have a lower teaching load, which was basically 1 course per semester, which was not that much. And I wanted to teach anyway because, it's a good option. Then, if you want to advance as an associate professor or full professor, you need to also have this teaching load, and you should have taught at least so many courses.
And can I ask you, when you talk about the full-time position, full position, is that a full-time position or?
Yes, of course, it's a full-time position on the paper.
Oh, but that means that you work 40 hours here and 40 hours there. Is that how it's arranged?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
at that time, I was working actually even more. I had a 40-hour contract with ING. I had a 40-hour contract with the business school. And I also worked 8 hours here in the Netherlands, online, of course, remotely.
But how is it possible? I mean, I know you, so I know that you will handle this. I was just curious because at least from what I know here in the Netherlands, this is probably not legal because there are some.
It's illegal. It is legal. You just don't get the discount on the tax. So you only can have favorable tax treatment if you have only one job. Okay, I was not doing this from the perspective of the Netherlands. So here I never had 2 full-time contracts. But from what I investigated, it's definitely possible because I work right now, like I don't have 4 full-time. So for example, my current situation is that I work for 4 startups, but I have only 1 full-time contract from one of them. And I have different types of contracts for the remaining ones, right? Because I manage them through the management position, right? So just a contractual contract, which is not employment contract for those firms.
This is amazing. So, but tell us, so what happened in Koźmiński? Was that something that you actually intended to do as your next step in your academic career? And because now you're not working there anymore, right? So
yes, exactly, yeah. So I just wanted to do what I had been doing for many years back then. So as you actually, how you and we met working in a research lab, right? So this was like work. Of course, it was unpaid. It was unpaid. It was a research, but you were doing your studies and extra work in a lab.
Yeah.
So and we met like in 2010 or something, right?
Yeah.
So in just 2017, it was just continuation of that attitude where you are working and studying something or being in academia at the same time. So so what I wanted back then was just to maintain this link. Another big insight I think is that I still have, and I had lots of papers in the pipeline, right? So I wanted to publish them under some nice affiliation. So it's really good to have an academic affiliation for just publishing your papers from the past. That's what often happens. For example, during my PhD, I published lots of papers, but not all of them.
Right.
So that's one. And of course, you need the academic infrastructure and the university infrastructure to have it published, access to the database and whatnot. Another one, I wanted to do this special degree in Poland, the Doctor of Science, which is Doctor Habilitowany, habilitation. This also opens up to you a lot of things. For example, I would get it in economics, which means that you can be on the without any exams and certificates, you can be on the board of public companies, right? That's a benefit of it. And at least in Poland, it's also a big plus just having this. And the third one was to keep the paths open to continue in academia. So what happened when I was in Koźmiński, I also interviewed for a tenure track position in Maastricht Business School. And I got a position there, a 5-year contract, but I didn't accept it.
Oh, really? So why didn't you accept it then?
Yeah, because it was also something which I didn't like, was that okay, so the story is the following. When I was working in ING in Poland, I was making much more money than a tenure track professor would in Maastricht. Maastricht is like a top business school, in the FT rank is top 25. And of course, in the Netherlands, you have the KO agreements, so you have the salary scales, which are the same for everyone. And they advertise the position as that your salary would be between 3,500 and 4,800. So you can see it's a big spread between 3,500 and 4,800 euro. So I thought, well, okay, looking at my salary, I would get a big cut anyway. So I was like, okay, guys, if you want me, you should pay me the 4,800. And after all the interviews and everything, they were like, oh, we're making an offer and we give you 3,500. I was like, this is what I made this is what I was paid when I was Marie Curie. That's what the Marie Curies get paid as a PhD, 3,500. So I was like, you want to pay me what I was paid 4 years ago when I was starting doing a PhD? I'm like, can't you, why did you advertise it for 4,800? This is what I would accept. They were like, oh, yeah, but this is what you can get after being 5 years with us. I'm like, okay, so what's the maximum you can receive now? Oh, it's 3,700. Okay, well, then I, of course, excuse myself to not appear, greedy or whatever. I just said I didn't understand the process, but I think it was just false advertising.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of different strategies to attract good candidates to job interviews. So that's, I guess, just one of them. Just put the spread to large numbers so that it sounds like a lavish salary, but it's not. So I'm sorry that you had that experience. But tell me, okay, but actually, I would like to ask you, what do you think about this common opinion? So it's actually very often that I hear that from many sources, that this popular opinion that the best exit point from academia is like right after your PhD, because if you stay for longer, that you always stay with the intention to become a full professor and just spend your life in academia. So that it's actually good to either decide after your PhD if you want to go for academic career and just spend a lifetime doing that, or at that point you should actually forget about academia and switch to industry, because these additional years spent in academia don't really give you any edge for the employer. So what do you think about this opinion?
Yeah, it really depends on the job. Look, if you apply to Facebook and they see you did a postdoc, this is like, okay, wow, sweet. You were assistant professor, nice. Look, if you go to Facebook, Google, to R&D teams, which many, even from your field, I think, from natural sciences, neuroscience, human imaging, they love people like this because you know a lot about analyzing images. And like Facebook, it's about Facebook. They need to know, they need people who know how to analyze image. Okay, it's about what's inside the brain, but in the end, you have the data skills to do this. So imagine you go for an interview like this and you get it. You get on the team, and people look at you, and all of your colleagues have PhD, but you have a postdoc and assistant professor. Okay, do you think? And then you applied for a leadership position. Do you think you will have easier time leading them or more difficult time? And you will have a higher probability of getting this job or lower? Of course, higher, because your team, you will have like a small lab within, Samsung or Facebook or Google, and people around you, like 3 or 4 colleagues in this specific team, will also have PhDs, but you will have a postdoc and assistant professor. So, you have more mojo, you have more, swag, you have more persuasion power because you've seen more. Maybe you have, they will just, it will be easier for you definitely to progress within the firm. And also to progress, you need to be in the leadership position, and to be in the leadership position, you should have walked the walk, right? And think about, the other way around. Imagine that your leader is only a PhD, and you have all those academic credentials, and maybe they are really good in managing the people, but will you take, their view on some technical aspects? Of course you will, because, you need everyone's input, but you will have this slight feeling that, well, maybe I know a little bit more.
That's true, although I think that it really depends on the type of industry and the type of job, because there are also industry positions where, and I see it often in like large corporations that are actually structured in this like archaic way. So, like General Electric, all these like big corporations that were created like 100 or 50 years ago, and they still work in a very conservative way. And in those corporations, it's often the case that your boss is actually less educated than you are. Because,
yes, and that's perfectly fine. Look, in ING, it was exactly what you say. It didn't matter what kind of education you had. If you had the master's degree, for example, I was in the credit risk modeling, right? So everyone there was after mathematics or computer science, but only to master's degree. And if you had a PhD or further, it was actually considered a huge hindrance. But not because of the degree, because of the way you thought and spoke. You spoke in too much academic mathematical formulas, which no one cared about, while you should be practical and fast. So it was, people disliked people. Yes, in ING, for example, no one had PhD, and only a couple of people with PhD was in my department, credit risk modeling, which is super mathematical. And even there, if you had a PhD, you would often hear that you are too academic.
Yeah, that's actually, it's true that also every company is a bit different and they have their own culture. So it's also hard to generalize. So even to like every single industry, because at the end of the day, like the same background that is valued at one place might be actually, and actually I also hear that a lot, that for instance, if you go work in a company as a PhD, then you have to also be very careful about how you approach other people, because at PhDs, they often have this tendency that if they get a problem to solve, then they just sit down and solve it and just sit there until it's solved. So they forget about the whole world and they just get on the bonkers modes to actually solve the problem. And for other people around, it's sometimes not well seen if you skip lunch every day for a week because you just indulged into your problem. And that's often interpreted as being ignorant or being, just arrogant also, that you will not just hang out with people who without a PhD, which is not true. It's just the reason is different. But it's also something that PhDs who go to their first job in industry have to mind, that they have to actually actively push themselves to like break their working pattern and also socialize, because otherwise it's not really seen in a positive way.
Yeah, look, my advice to this is, from your own perspective, do 10% of what you are used to do in academia. So if you go the first half a year, if you go to a firm and it's not like the R&D department where everyone has a PhD. So if no one around you has a PhD, give an output of 10% of what you're used to. And instead, listen and see what others are doing and what is the output which is expected. And then after 1 year, you can see, you increase this number of your output, and then you become 2 or 3 times more efficient usually than people around you. But if you produce at 100%, you will produce 90% of which are things which are not useful to the firm at all, and that's a big problem.
Okay.
Because it will be too complex and not adequate. If you want to bring a product to the market, customers don't care about the things which PhD people care. Instead of working this 90% more of an algorithm behind the product, what's important for a customer is that you can click those buttons very easily. And if you produce too much, you just bother your product team with too much of things which are totally not necessary, and no one is going to pay for this.
Yeah, very, very good advice. And okay, so can we now proceed to the rest of your story up to this point? And just because I'm very curious how you got your current positions and why you decided to actually come to Amsterdam and work here again.
Yeah. So what I like again about this journey is that so I was in ING. I had a tenure track position, assistant professorship in a business school, very good one. I was a deputy director in credit risk modeling. I had like 10 analysts working with me, and then what happened was the following. So after that, I went to Oxford for a master's degree, after having a PhD, postdoc, and being assistant professor. Why is that? And because let's go back a bit. So when I got hired by ING, I got hired by ING with a promise that if I do well for 2 years, I will be promoted to the director, the head of the department. And this, after 2 years, for many reasons, didn't happen, which I thought was not really an objective measure. But I said, okay, fine, maybe I'm not too good for this, so I can wait a bit more. But I also was very disappointed in this, so I started applying to top business schools to improve my profile, and I got accepted in Oxford. So then I told this to ING, and they were like, "Oh, okay, it didn't work out well, but look, if you stay with us for 1 year, for 1 more year, we will pay for this." I said, "Okay, let's do that." So the boss of my boss, I waited for 2 months. He went to the CEO, and the CEO said, "Oh, we are not paying for the business schools anymore, but if Peter wants to do a data science degree in Stanford or MIT, we will pay for this up to 50,000 euro. I said, well, it costs twice more, right? I said, okay, let's do that. But because the previous thing which you told me about that I'm going to get promoted to director didn't work out, and it's not in the paper, so could you put this on the paper? And they were like, oh no, we don't put such things on the paper. I was like, okay, sorry guys, I believed you once. This time I'm not going to believe you. So yeah, I resigned and I went for the master's studies in Oxford I will tell you also why I did that in a second, but also in Koźmiński, it was the things were not going too well, to be honest. I found out a lot of things which I didn't like. And I just realized that really, at least for now, Poland is not for me. It's a totally different culture than, like Netherlands. It's not transparent. It's what matters there is loyalty, some kind of, by party politics. So, of course, it's present everywhere. I lived in Switzerland, in the Netherlands. You also see those things, but there it is just like 5 or 10 times more. So I'm like, okay, sorry, I will just go out from here. And the best option was this option. And I also did that. So this were the push factors. This is what was pushing me, but what was pulling me from a top business school, top university, is to see what's the standard there, right? I did coursework, summers courses, or just degrees. Like I counted like in 8 different places or 10 different universities, but I never was in top 1 or top 2. And I can tell you that it's really worth it, I paid it for myself. It's very, very expensive. So I took big loans again, because for my previous studies, for my master's and Erasmus, I also took loans. So this time I took like 60,000 euro to cover the master degree and the living costs, and it was just amazing. If you study really in in Ivy League or Oxbridge, it's totally different thing. And even if you have a PhD and postdoc and whatever from really good universities, the master degree in a different field, because I studied their master in law and finance, really teaches you a lot every day.
Yeah, then I would like to congratulate you on this brave move then, because I think it's like really out of the comfort zone to be
totally
around 30, quite established already, and just leave it all and get a loan. So reduce your sort of assets under zero just to invest in yourself at this point. Like, this is really great. So please continue the story.
Yeah. So yeah, and what was really super surprising and really sad. Okay, so I did that, and I wanted to, because I was in the bank. So before that, I was in technology. Within the bank, I also was within technology, but I really wanted to move to finance, right? So while I was in Oxford, I was interviewing for finance jobs, like in hedge funds, investment banking, private equity. But basically, I didn't fit there at all. Like, this PhD and academic background was a huge hindrance. My age, because it's for people who are 22 years old, 23, 24, and and a bit of not the right background in general. So I didn't get it, and it was super disappointing, because if you would think that you study law and finance in Oxford, that this kind of financial career will be super easy in the city, in London, which is, before they left European Union and still are, the financial center is like New York or Singapore. So I didn't get anything, any job, even though I interviewed for, like, for example, Deloitte, McKinsey, within financial/technological services. But I got a job as summer associate in a fintech in London, in Mayfair. Mayfair is like a fancy zone where all the hedge funds work. So I did, and it was really my field. It was finance plus technology. It was credit risk modeling startup. I spent there 2 months. Unfortunately, and this was the moment when I was moving from my middle office, back office jobs to front office. So there I was trying to sell their solution. In there, actually, because it was a venture capital backed startup, so it wasn't really about selling the product, but selling, like, trying to get pilots, to be piloted in the big institutions, in the big financial institutions. I did that for 2 months, but then I got a really nice offer here from Amsterdam to come back to the firm which I started for the management position, and not at the level of the computer vision firm, but the entire holding, which is about AI and deep tech. So I'm working at the holding level in the which we have there 4 different startups. One is computer vision, as I mentioned. Other one is data science, web mining, and variation on the computer vision, which is a SaaS platform.
Yeah, amazing. And actually, I have to ask you now this question, as it just came to my mind just a second ago. So when you were telling about your story, I was just wondering, what type of people were you meeting on the way? So did you have some personal mentors, or maybe how do you and what are your criteria to choose people? So how do you choose people you want to work with, and what do you value in people?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So to be honest, I didn't give it to this too much thought. Unfortunately, I don't have mentors. I'll make all the decisions by myself. I ask people. I try to seek for mentors, and obviously, I ask their opinion and feedback. But at least the mentors who have a stake in you, they are perhaps not good mentors, and the rest of people, they don't understand your context. So I think if you have a typical path, people can resonate with you, like like super typical. But if I look at my CV, it's just a spaghetti. So it's very difficult that people resonate with this, and there's not. It's I ask for advice, but it's not digestible. Some things people don't want to tell you. It's an unspoken kind of thing which you have to figure out yourself, because those things just sound ugly when people tell you, like, and they go about our liberal Western kind of standards. For example, that with enough effort you can do whatever, right? That just doesn't happen. That's about the mentor. So unfortunately, I'm looking for a mentor. It would be really nice.
Actually, I have to tell you one thing. So I actually asked this question to a lot of people who I think are good navigators, so they can navigate themselves in the job market relatively well, or very well, like you. And actually, surprisingly often, I get this response. So vast majority actually complains about lack of mentors. But like when you think about it, that it might be actually, so what is the cause and what is the effect, right? So it may be that on one hand we like to believe that mentors are useful, but on the other hand, this is like giving you a it's like living on breathing aid, so you always have someone to get input from, but whereas if you're on your own, you have to learn by trial and error, and maybe this by and you have to get to know yourself really well, and maybe in the long run it actually pays off to be on your own sometimes.
Yes, I mean, yeah, that's a very good point. So mentors, I would really like to have a mentor, but yeah, I don't know, it didn't work out too well.
Well,
But as to choose,
I can tell you, like, what works for me is actually looking out for people who are similar. So they are also like quite independent and just peer coach in a way, or just be friends, and just exchange.
I have many people like this. I really have the sounding board people. I have this. So I have peers. I have peers. Mentors, yeah, unfortunately, not too much.
Okay, let us quickly jump to the question from Jacob. So Jacob is asking, are some forms of outreach considered billable hours? Have you ever done any outreach that was paid?
No. In academia?
Okay, I think it was a general question, but okay. I also think that's really hard to make money on it. And the next question is, could you rephrase a key experience? Can you?
Yeah, the blue sky. Yeah, the blue sky liberalism. Yeah, I mean, look. For example, you would imagine that when you are coming in with a lot of experience and you have jobs which require 0 years of experience, you would have much better chance than the rest. While it's the other way around. You have to be fresh and without contamination of knowledge to get the mostly coveted positions. It's like breeding dogs and puppies. If you haven't been bred in the proper way from the moment you are more or less born, you have no chance in jobs like private equity or investment banking. Maybe a bit in the consulting, that's valued more there. But the things which are like mostly high paid, basically if your parents don't set you up on this, or for some reason you end up in Oxford as the first year undergrad, and you figure out on your own that the Oxford Union is the most important place to be, then you have no chance. I mean, if you are not like, you know, from high school going to Oxford and knowing that from the first year, like Boris Johnson, that you should be involved in the Oxford Union, then you're already almost lost. There's a really small probability that you will ever end up working for a cool hedge fund. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the constraint is the who. I mean, you should go to the. I mean, of course, there are cases of people who are, you know, but your chance is then 0.01% instead of like 10% or 15%. If you didn't, for example, in the UK, right, you basically have to go to the right high school, and then like 15 of you go to Oxford. You already have friends, pre-established network. You hang out with them. All of you apply to the Oxford Union, and you just continue hanging out there.
Okay. Okay. So now I would like to ask you a really cheesy question, which is how you see yourself in the future. So in like 5 to 10 years, because like you have very interesting stories so far. So is it that you have a plan in the long run, or it's always unfolding, you know, like a river flying?
Yeah. So both. Both. Look, I mean, I think what is I would like to be more entrepreneurial in the next 10 years. But what I think is overvalued is that you start your own firm when you're very young. You can do this, but I think the learning from the market in the, you know, that the young people get millions and millions or, you know, billions of dollars to build startups who just care about the growth and not the sustainable revenues. And then we all see what happens, you know, like if we work in Uber. Of course, there are amazing ventures which were built like that, but I don't know, I think that's really overvalued. And if you want to have a normal firm, which is like, you know, socially responsible and sustainable, I think it's really important that you learn and you work in corporations and startups and as much experience, generic experience and, you know, different experience you can get. So this is what I'm doing. You know, I'm working across different places. I work across different places, and I'm just learning to hopefully do something like in 10 years, maybe my kind of, you know, own firm, right?
Actually, I have something to add because I recently found some statistics on like I have to find it somewhere again because
I know that like the most successful startups are about the founders who are like 44 or something.
yes, or
Yeah,
40
exactly.
or 50. Yes. Like so, for those who didn't hear about this, like there was some statistics on that debunk this myth that you know you have to be like 20-year-old dropouts to set a successful company because actually the relationship between the age of the founders and the success rate of the company was actually linearly growing with time, and there was like a maximum was at like 50-60. So it's really like that you don't really lose in a long perspective. You might actually also save yourself from a lot of problem if you are actually waiting with a company.
Yeah, and also, you know, to start something I think you should start with a good amount of savings. But look, this ageism thing, I think it's a really huge obsession. I was part of it when I was in Oxford. I really wanted to be Forbes 30 under 30. You know, I looked at my CV. I'm like, whoa, I should really get Forbes 30 under 30. And I investigated this, and I have quite a few people who did it, and they're amazing, of course. But what happens, like for example, with Forbes 30 under 30, you look at their enterprises. There's nothing there. It's just smoke and mirrors. The amazing statements on their CVs are, when you poke through the smoke, there is nothing there. It's just everything. It's a PR. And the best thing about Forbes 30, you know, Forbes 30 under 30,
Yes,
right?
yes.
The best chance that you get it, first of all, there are not only 30 of them, but 600 per year in the United States, and then you have national ones. So for countries like
also basically there are different categories, right? So it's 30 under 30, but there are 20 different categories.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, in the world one, there is 600. Then you have local ones. So like countries like Poland or Czech Republic, you run out of people after a couple of years. So getting it's not a big deal. And second of all, again, what I mentioned and what Jacob was asking about, you have to be part of it because if you want to be selected, people who, you know how the process works, you are recommended by people who got it. Yeah. So it's not, it's you know, the more recommendations you get, the higher chance is that you get it. And then, of course, some of them are really nice ventures and everything. But it's like in academia, you know, the Forbes 30 under 30, the Forbes, they, for example, look at this, aren't you too old, even though it's under 30, because they need to have like nicely distributed thing when you have, 22s and 25s and 28s. So I was like, oh my God, those people are such entrepreneurs. They have, the newest technology, cutting edge and whatnot. And then you go to KVK, Chamber of Commerce, and, the firms are either not registered or have zero revenues, no investors. Okay. I mean, yeah, I can, and then I, for example, I work now in the startup and, I can sell huge contracts on AI and deep tech. And I know that many of those Forbes 30 under 30 are not able to do this.
Yeah, totally. Actually, my first thought was the same. So sounds like academia indeed. Yeah, well, I think I knew about it, but I knew that I'm not a person that is going to get it, so I never really thought about it. But actually, the question I would have for you is, so what do you actually consider your biggest success so far?
You know what? Finishing my PhD in I know it's a different field than yours, but finishing my PhD in super fast speed, right? So the average to get a PhD in the Netherlands, and don't take it personally or anything, because I know they are taking a bit longer or whatever, but your thesis is like much longer than mine, so also doesn't matter. But I'm just comparing to generic statistics. So it takes 5.5 years on average to finish a PhD, and I had this goal, to finish my PhD before I at the age of 25, which I did,
Whoa.
and from really good university. Of course, I didn't want, so like at least QS ranking, really high. Not some from university in Poland, for example. Those PhDs are just, most of them are not, they're not PhDs, and also finished in super fast, but like 3 times the normal output, right? So I published during my PhD like 10 papers, while the normal one is like 3, and you just need one to go through the promotion. So that was, and that's my biggest success. Also, in a sense that when I came to the Netherlands, this was the thing which I said, look, I did my 5 years degree in Poland in half time, right? 2.5 years. So I did 309 ECTS in 2 years and 9 months. There were times when in one semester I was getting like 100 ECTS. And what I really got, like kind of positively mad was like the people in the Netherlands saying, oh, but this is possible only in Poland. Like some kind of third world country. I was like, yes? Okay, let me prove you wrong in your own country. And this is what I feel. It's just, I did it for fun as a challenge. I didn't, of course, tell it to anyone. This is what I was just thinking, just to see what is humanly possible in terms of going right about, the academia and what's needed to graduate, which are the publications.
Yeah, that's another amazing thing that I didn't even know about you. So how much time did you actually spend during your PhD?
All the time. So, as I said, 60 weeks per week. But that's not the key. The key is that you need to find support if you want to achieve this. So I already had a lot of experience doing my master's and bachelor degrees in this. So I already had lots of experience. And then the moment I got the Marie Curie grant, which was, I think, 250,000 euro or something. I don't remember anymore. And I get really high salary. I get to go to all the conferences in the world. I get so many people who can support me. I was in the firm who helped me publish the papers on the technology. Then it's really, and then you put the 60, 70 hours per week, and then it's possible. So it's not only about your, effort, how much you put it, because you can put a lot of effort in vain, but what's the structure around it.
I see. Okay, we have a question from Jacob again. I always hear the problem with the disconnectedness of human enterprise today. It's like we still have to literally scratch a person's back to collaborate. This while information and communication is digitized and global. Our roots are tribal, but our reach is much more.
Yeah, so I think there are two points to this, right? I mean, you can have huge success being tribal, but then you have to choose to be in the best. lab. It's not enough that you are in Oxford. You have to be in the best lab in Oxford. Like, for example, now with the COVID vaccine, all the countries are financing the Oxford research on the COVID vaccine, right? The Netherlands, Italy, Germany, United States, everyone is putting orders from there to a group perhaps of people who is like 20 people or something, and there's 1 or 2 professors who are the deep people about it, So that's being tribal, and you can be super successful. Another one is which you also mentioned is the reach is much more, and you can be super successful if you have a huge reach, and you can then avoid being tribal and build huge communities or whatnot and just be successful. But I think then in this this big reach is just much more hassle. You can be pretty much accidentally successful by being tribal because you are just part of the right small research group, and you are not exceptional. You are just there. But I think if you want to have a huge reach, then there must be something about you.
And can I ask you, Peter, if you are still planning to come back to academia one day? Because
yes,
if I understood correctly, your assistant professorship was your last contract so far.
Yes, exactly. Look, look. I think that's that's the takeaway. I mean, I don't like this thing like go from industry to academia. Why? You can plan your life as you want. You can do both at the same time, and you can always have your options open. So it could be that I will come. I mean, it's also not really. I mean, yeah, like look, I have not mentors, but I have inspirations from lots of people. So, for example, the firm which we collaborate, Noldus, the founder Lucas Noldus, did his PhD, opened his firm, very successful, based on the software which he made. No one was interested in his research in 1980s, but in his software for tracking human behavior, tracking animal behavior. And then while there, he was, very successfully commercially firm. But then he also published a lot on this. And then just last year in October, he got a specially appointed professor position in the Randman University, for which his firm is paying 1 day a week. I also interviewed for KPMG, and their one partner, it's a partner in KPMG, and he's also a professor in data science. And I don't know if he does research or teaches, but you can definitely combine it whatever where you want it. And I'm also now for example thinking about having affiliations like research fellowships in good universities. Just write to them, hey, because I also know people who do this, and just be there, be publishing, maybe teach sometimes and whatnot. Going full time to academia, I don't know yet, but what I like is really having your options open and having this, maybe 1 or 2, 3, 4% of extra, just maintaining your relationships, publishing a bit, always getting involved in this and that. Also in your own work, even I'm in sales, I'm very interested in R&D parts, so then I can always talk about something, scientific.
Very interesting. I'm just like while listening to you, I'm just trying to figure like if you're more of a researcher or if you're actually more of an entrepreneur, and it's really hard to classify for me. So how do you see yourself? Is it that you are actually both at the time, or you really like research serves some some purpose for your entrepreneurial career, or maybe the other way around? Like, how do you see this?
Look, I think you have to be entrepreneurial to be good in research. So I once told friends that when I was going for PhD, was that I want to do PhD because this is the only thing which you cannot buy with money. One of the things, of course, love and things like this. But so when Jacob was asking about this blue sky liberalism, this is like the antithesis of it, right? I mean, here you can, you can put a lot of effort. I mean, you can see a lot of people who have money, they made money on things which are like bad for the environment, bad for other people. It's just or they inherited the money, but the thing which you have a huge control over is academia. In principle, when you go there, you think that it's super objective, But then and then you put your entrepreneurial spirit to work on that side to get for example published in an objective way. Of course, with time, you discover that this is not really that objective and transparent. And then you really ask yourself, should I put my entrepreneurial spirit to gossip and be part of the clique and the tribe and do weird things to get published, right? Because this could be considered entrepreneurial, but in a bad way. So I think it's a mix, and I always think about the things in terms of spectrum, and it's not like you're on a spectrum from 0 to 10, always at 7, but it changes, during the years and during the months and maybe during the day.
I also think that actually successful researchers often have this entrepreneurial thinking, maybe not in a way you just described, but maybe in a different way. So when they choose projects, they often think ahead about the commercial potential of the project, right? So it's always good to also see the project a bit like a business project. So how many potential customers, how many people are potentially interested in reading this, and with whom can I do it? Like, do I have good collaborations that will, function well, and in what is the time to market, how much time it will take me and how much effort. And I think people who actually weight these factors before they get down to the project actually do best.
Yes, but this is a very important point, right? Because you can do this in a good way, in a nice way. This is what you describe, and then I think it feels good. But then you can do it in a wrong way, which feels like, you shouldn't be doing this. Yeah. So I think what people who are very innocent when they come to academia, they underestimate or they don't like too much the first part. I think it's really good to think, in terms of time to market, how many potential clients, people who are going to read this research are there going to be, and things like this, but in a good way. It's not that you will do this and sell yourself for that, your soul, for example.
Yes, I understand. Okay, so maybe even more I'm still trying to drill into what are you planning to do next, because
okay, yeah, look, for the next very good. I just want to stay in my firm. I am doing crazy amazing things there. I have a huge impact on the firm. I'm selling really cool technology, AI, which is helping in lots of places. I do lots of interesting various projects, and it's just very good for my development. So definitely in the future, just doing it, because this firm it was AI firm, so it's a fascinating story. So it's an AI firm. I really like to stay there because of this reason. One of the main reasons is that they're like the true deep tech AI firm, which was founded in 1990, and the founder started it before. And we have a physical paper where he writes about neural networks in 87. So we are one of the oldest AI firms in Europe, maybe in the world, but we are not the best, and that's what I would like to change. There's an amazing legacy, but I would like to work on that. So there is some kind of nice history behind it. It's old and wise, but now there's this challenge, and I have a mandate to make it successful.
Great. Okay, and what about distant future? Really, do you ever think about 20 years from now,
Of course,
where you want to go?
Yes, look, yes, I would like to have. What do you mean, in what terms?
In any terms, can you see any elements of your life in 20 years?
Yes, definitely. I think I will stay in the Netherlands, unless something, big changes in Poland, for example. But Netherlands is just amazing. I lived in so many countries that the Netherlands is the best, in my opinion. So definitely here, trying to ingrain myself more into the society, taking on more positions, just, being around. I am, for example, in the committee of Oxford and Cambridge in the Netherlands. We are doing some nice work there, participating all the time in different kind of, I'm also in the local startup scene. I'm not doing there much, but I'm just hanging out to learn more. I'm always up for, publishing and finishing my papers. So yeah, for example, in 20 years, I would like to do this, what I mentioned about those couple of people, for example, being one day professor at the university, really nice. And just work in technology, I think tech has a big potential to change the world. So my really 20 years plan, it would be really nice to take AI and technology and try to use it to make the life more sustainable and prevent climate change. So I'm not doing this now, and maybe I should, but I'm not. I'm just learning, and maybe like in 10 years, I would like to take this knowledge and like use data science or whatever it is, tech in general, just to make sure that we survive in a good quality of life.
Interesting. Okay.
And of course, I mean, this is on the professional level. On the personal level, I think the pension system, that's something. It's it's like a bit of a lottery. You have like 50% of chance that it's going to be there. So I'm definitely looking into diversification, into investments, very carefully and very slowly. So not going into bitcoins and whatnot. Even though I own Bitcoin, I bought Bitcoin in the end of 2009. But like real estate, passive funds, just to build up this. I'm also maxing out my corporate pension, so I'm paying as much additional as I can. So just to make sure that you have enough, to have when you are retired.
That sounds very interesting. I don't want to get into Bitcoin right now, but congratulations. I mean, the end of 2009, that sounds like a great deal. So great. Okay, like there is a question from Jacob that is on a bit different topic, which is about networking. So the hustle is the issue. How do you manage more than 200 relationships?
Yeah, so people, basically you don't know one does. All the relationships are very superficial. And I think it's okay to be fine with this. For example, in Oxford, I had so many relationships, and I wanted deeper relationships, but no one is up to it. If you are in places, like this, no one really. The problem is that people always think that in the next room or in the next meeting there is something better than in this room, right? It's like in Davos. You go. That's what I'd never been to Davos, but my friends were, and this is what you read on the newspaper. That like you always think that there is a better meeting or like a better person to talk to. So that's and so I think no one does really, and I don't. I mean, if you, so there is. I'm not really an expert on this, so I don't know. But if I was going toward this direction, I would read this. I read this blog, and I like a blog post by Tim Ferriss about 1,000 true funds, and I think he gives there great tips on how to do this and why and how it should work. And I think when you start looking at 200, this is what you are really starting looking into. You're not really looking into relationships, but into having fans who will promote your content.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of interesting information. And actually, I also have a question about your networking. So, do you also have some ways of promoting yourself? I mean, because like today, I think we live in this era that your presence online sort of defines you as a professional, and in some ways, so in different industries, maybe the strategy is a bit different. So in some industries, like your LinkedIn profile and activity is the most important to promote yourself. In certain areas, actually, what gives you the edge is like being a Medium author and having a following there. And there are, or maybe personal website or personal blog and personal following. So, do you appear in the public space in some way, or at the moment you're like under the radar, just doing your job and not thinking?
Yeah, I think I'm under the radar doing my job. Yeah, I think it goes back to a bit. Yeah, I mean, I mean, I think it's a full-time job, to promote yourself. And then unfortunately what happens is that it's very often superficial.
Yeah.
Unless the content which you are creating should be, promoted, and you should be doing outreach. So if you're building a new venture, maybe that's what you should be doing. I always so far joined established places, and how we get work, things to do, is through word of mouth. So just people knowing you. So personally, I don't have to do this right now too much. In the future, if I had, I don't know how I would do it, and if it would be necessary. That's what I think. That's why I want to first build this reputation for 15, 20 years, is that people send me messages saying, hey, can you do this for me? Instead of me saying, hey, I can do this. Who wants that? That's a different approach. It's true. Well, yes. So I have a really passive, presence online. So I have LinkedIn, and I really worked hard on this to have. So basically, what is important, you have this word of mouth, so people come to you to have projects, but they don't know you. Okay, you were recommended, but you want to see that you are a real deal. So at least my attitude, not everyone likes this and agrees with this. I just list very strong things on my CV. And so then when they look me up, it's like, oh, okay, this guy can execute this. I can pay this guy, $500,000 to do this. So they know that I'm not, a BS, but I will get things done for you. And so the LinkedIn is my, my business card basically. And then, I have my Instagram. So I post there sometimes, different things, but this is more for friends and the rest.
I see. Well, this is actually a big pain for me also, because I think that a lot of people who are really interesting and doing really interesting projects and something like truly innovative, they are often under the radar. So it's really hard to find them in the public space. It's kind of anti-correlates the quality
exactly.
of content with the amount of publicity.
And look, this was a big problem for me, because I thought this is the other way around. So I thought the people who are in the space, they are the best and they're like doing the cool things. But this is it's so counterintuitive, I spent during my Marie Curie, because we got so much money in conferences and whatnot. And I also thought, oh my God, these people are there, they're speaking, they are the real deal. This is the people you should be hanging out with them. And then you do it for many years, as I did, and you're like, okay, I'm missing something. Like, is this not the right place? Okay, so what I do, I go to Oxford. And then again, the same, something similar happens. Another thing about, presence and whatnot, and networking, when you don't have, I think, no, never mind. It's about a different topic. Never mind. Let's skip.
Okay, well, I wanted to say that actually I agree that this is also pain, because it just steals your creativity onto producing these snippets of information. And actually, this is actually first thing that I will outsource when I have funds for it. So I will definitely hire someone who is my representative on social media and post the content there, because
exactly.
I don't think it's worth to really do it by yourself in the long run. So I totally agree with this. Nice that we actually shared this opinion, because I know a lot of really smart people and creative people who actually kind of sell their creative, productive time on just glued to Twitter and glued to Facebook, and this is so sad as well, because they could spend this time so much better. And I mean, I don't have anything against social media, but I think indeed the amount of time you have to put in to get
and we tried it. I tried it, I tried it at the beginning so long, yes, and it's just not giving effects. And I can see that for startups, when you do it for others, we put posts, which are very nice, and no one reads them, and we never get clients from there. I think we get credentials, we get social proof that we know about the things, but it's very rare that we just get someone saying, "Oh, you wrote this post. Would you like to do a contract for me for 200K?" No.
Well, it's also my observation, from writing my blog, also is that the amount of people who read it on a regular basis is not that high, but they are usually the right people. So it's also depends what you aim for, because if you aim for, sometimes, I now make a lot of interesting new contacts, because people who I reach out to possibly participate in the webinar, they also often check out my blog and they're like, oh yeah, we have a lot in common. I want to do this. And so there are a lot of non-material gains from it. But totally, I mean, if I wanted to monetize this blog, I couldn't really, because it's not, in terms of absolute numbers, is nowhere near the levels you have to be at. So for me, it's up not for quantity, it's for quality. So people who talk to me about what they read and they would like to discuss are usually people who I really want to hang out with. So actually the right people are kind of attracted by this content, and so I'm very happy about that. But yeah, indeed, if you want to really become a persona, because I cannot really say these a real I mean, I think this is if you want to go public on Twitter or any other social media, you have to develop some persona, right? So if you want to become one of those, then probably this is indeed a full-time job. And actually, I can tell you how I approach this. So for me, I have some business plan for my company for this year, and this is a year of production. So graduating from PhD, producing some new content, writing second book, writing some content that will be then converted into products, and learning how to commercialize my activities, etc. And so this year is actually a year of production, and the next year will be a year of promotion. So then I produce much less on a regular basis, but then I spend much more attention onto how to spread the message and how to attract more people to the infrastructure I've built. So I totally agree, it's not possible to do it at the same time. So for me, I kind of took this attitude that I have to do it in this fashion that I kind of interchange between two states of mind, and it's either that I'm in the production state or I'm in the salesmanship state, and
Yes.
they never come together.
Yes, this is, for example, very close to what we have in plan for our scaling up of our company. There were 3 stages. One was to get the financing under the order, which is done. The second one is to prepare the house for this promotion, right? So first you have to set up all the content, it has to be written down, the procedures has to be there, and then you can start promoting this and trying to sell more. That's scaling up.
Right.
And even and it's important also because if you want to involve other people who know, if you want to hire them, you have to hire them to a house which is already in order.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have, I think, 2 more questions, and if there are no more questions for you, then we'll be wrapping up soon. So my first question would be: do you have any regrets? Like, is there anything that you would do differently if you just look back at anything from the level of your undergraduate studies or graduate studies and your career later? Like, what would you tell yourself at the very beginning? So what would you do differently?
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't perhaps study psychology. I would study computer science or physics or economics, because then if you want to be a real badass in tech, you need physics, math like you, or computer science with all the same attitudes which I have, or just like something finance, like just to have a shot at the financial board. So I think I studied psychology because for many reasons I thought it was like a step before the economics, but it's really not. So I would do that differently. It turned out in the end quite well, because you can always study more things. But for example, my brain is not, or I don't have enough motivation to, do things like you can do with math, for example.
Right. Okay. Yeah, actually, I was studying psychology because I needed a break between studying mathematics and physics. So
Exactly.
my breaks were basically reading lectures from psychology. So
exactly.
vacation time, actually. So, but it was nice also. It was just this, picnic atmosphere, very different from the other faculties I was studying at. Okay, so I understand, but I understand. I mean, some studies, like master studies, especially like these days in Poland and many other countries, like it's so easy to become to have that master degree. It doesn't give you any edge on the job market anymore, and many majors, they don't really prepare you for any like industry positions that well, and they don't give any edge by themselves. So I think psychology is like that as well. And actually, surprisingly, I have to tell you, like now, 10 years after I graduated, like it kind of starts becoming useful, because actually what I do in the company right now, I'm also working on aptitude tests, and it's actually psychometrics more than anything. And that was exactly what I was studying as a master student. So after like many years spent in neuroscience, now I have to open my textbooks that I was studying 10 years ago and like remind myself how to construct a test and how to standardize it. And it's like, travel back in time 10 years back. So you never know when it comes useful. Maybe one day you discover that this was actually maybe a good choice, because all of a sudden it comes out useful.
Look, totally agree. I got this amazing job in ING because people in the credit risk modeling were fed up with people who know maths and in computer science, but they don't know anything about the customer behavior. And there is psychology, and I had this really good profile that I could understand both. And that's why I got hired, because it was just a new person who's like, oh, they know about psychometrics, and and economics, because I did my psychology with focus on economics. So it came super useful. But if I think looking at the back, it could be something else or something else. You know what? I think you can study whatever, classics, history, psychology, but if you do it like in Oxbridge, like Oxford or Cambridge, it's so that's maybe another regret that I didn't, in high school. I didn't go really for any super high grades in SATs or in the leaving exam, where you would have a shot at those top universities. I just didn't know what is it. Now I know what is it, and wow, it's really a game changer. If you can start being 19 years old in Oxbridge, it's just, even if you go back there and you do masters, maybe PhD is something similar, but it's still not the thing. It's just, yeah. I mean, doing undergrad, this is the thing. I think this is the thing. But you have to really, someone has to tell you. So you have to be basically born into the right network, or you just need to be, I don't know, one of those people like we have in Poland, for example, where just for some reason find out about it. They're not from, they're from little villages, which is a very good thing. I'm just saying. And someone comes with a presentation about this or that, which in my time wasn't there, and just inspires you. It's like, hey, you can apply to this. Like you also have a chance, which you never realize after.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't tell you when you're like, 17, 16 or 15.
Yeah, actually, we were also growing in times when like internet was also not as popular yet, and we just didn't have as much information. Now you can find everything online, so you can do your research right in your high school.
Yeah, exactly. But also, Poland just economically and socially got so much better. I mean, back in like when I was, doing my bachelor's degree, like so few Poles were studying in Oxford, and now it's just crazy.
Yeah, true. There is even some association of Polish people in Oxford that I know.
That one they've been. I was a committee member there too. This has been since 50s or something, so it's been for a long time. But just look up things like Ivy Foundation Poland. I'm a mentor there too. I mean, they're doing an amazing job, and everything is online, just on the internet.
I see. Yeah, I agree. A lot changed in Poland for the better, after all.
Yeah, or the conferences. The conferences in the UK. The Poland Summit 2.0, or the conference organized in the LSE and whatnot. I mean, those are like, wow. You have like 500, Poles who are studying UK in the top universities, students. This trend happened like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, okay. I will check it
So yeah, regret is also being born in the wrong time a bit. Of course, it's easy to say,
but on the job market, you have to always you cannot have those types of regrets, right? Because this is something you cannot really change. Like you can only compare against people who had kind of the same opportunities and just you can only compare to that and not to people who had who started 10 years later, because it's just incomparable. And actually I like to look at, I also don't think I really have mentors at the moment, but I like to create myself some role models. So look at people who are also objectively not privileged, but somehow they found their way to become really successful, whatever that means, and just concentrate on the thought that it's possible and not compare. Okay, so I have one more question that I often ask people, which is I think and interestingly, every single time I'm getting a different answer to the question, so that's also why it's worth to ask it. So the question is, what is your personal relationship with your job? So do you feel like you and your job is one entity and you are inseparable of your job, or is your job, how do you see it? Is your job a way of expressing yourself?
So in my mind it is. Objectively it's not. So I really like that to be, but I learned that this is not the right way, so it's not. So I want to, but it's not, and it shouldn't be. So, but yeah, I sacrifice a lot personally for my job. Then, yeah, I think objectively still, but I think it's still not the level at which I would like it to have. But I just learned to not to give 100%, because for many reasons it's just really bad. And the reasons which are bad are the following. First of all, you put your colleagues in the wrong light, because if you are producing 300% and they are producing 100%, then it's like yeah, we don't like you here because you're, just working too much. So sorry, go home. And yeah, I just also too much stress. I think, in the long term, it's just for your health too much of a problem. In the past, I was, for example, when I was doing my PhD, that was like 300% or more, 500%, and I had really big issues. Like, for example, for writing so much and using a keyboard and the mouse, my finger was moving like this by itself in the last stages of PhD. That's crazy. I had really huge pains here in my legs. I mean, at the age of 25, that's just unheard of. When I was working in ING, I had so much stress that I felt like all the time I'm having a heart attack, because I had this really strong, like someone was grabbing your heart like this. I was like, whoa, oh my God. So now I'm not working that hard. So in my mind, I would like to go back to this. I would be like really preferable, but I know that I'm not strong enough for this. I'm just getting, older or whatever. So I'm trying to not really equate both. So the answer is no, but I would like to have it to do it, but I can't.
Okay, thank you. That's another really interesting answer to the question. Okay, so if there are no further questions, then I think we can thank Peter for this amazingly interesting webinar today. Thank you for all this information, very insightful, and yeah, I wish you all the best. I mean, I also I don't really know what to wish you precisely, because I think I would just I'm very curious what you do next.
Health.
And
I think that's the only thing.
yeah, that's a very Polish thing also to say, like that you wish
Yeah.
health. That's what we used to wish each other, and so I wish you a lot of health. And yeah, I would like to see you more in the public space. I think it's a pity, but I totally see your points and see why you're reluctant to go public with your what you represent. I can see why, but
I think I will, but the thing is, you need to be. When you're, for me, going public, what I would have to do, I would like to run most of my messages and writings. They are quite, I think, strong and controversial. I would have to run it through our management team. That it doesn't reflect in any way badly on the common thing which we are doing.
right.
So and that's the thing which I don't want to put energy yet into, because I don't see a huge ROI on this yet.
Right.
I don't see it needed. So I think if you have a lot of independency and if you're your own boss, like you are, I think you don't have to get screened through others. So you can just write what you think of. And I like your posts because this is what you do. But one of the reasons is because you don't have anyone on.
Yes, I know. That's like the lack of editor is the best part of it. That's also why I chose to self-publish on Amazon, because like I really get torsions when someone is reading my text and edits it and then tells me what I have to do to actually be published, and like every single time having this reaction, like who are you, and like so the self-publishing books is like the only way to actually get away, like without because publishers are also quite territorial, and they also make a lot of comments before they publish your book. So actually I chose like going wild, like completely and without any supervision, and that actually works for me. But yeah, I totally see your point. Yeah.
Look, I don't have a problem with people editing my stuff, like even 50%. It's really not a big deal. For me, it's a hassle of it, a lot of back and forth and this kind of polar politics modeling writing where you have to. It's okay. I like it, but it just takes so much time. So I'm using this polar policy model of the Netherlands, where you have to come to common consensus on other things, and it takes already a lot of time. So if I started doing this on the things which I want to write, for example, I was thinking to write in Dutch for the Financiële Dagblad because it's a really good, interesting thing to do. But then you have to consult it with a couple of people at least, and then they, it's like writing a paper, right? For me, that would be the case.
Yeah.
So the hassle, not so much the edits, but the hassle in comparison to other things. So the opportunity cost.
Yeah, indeed. Okay.
But yeah, we will see. We'll see in a couple of years. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I really want to see where you're going next and how your career like continues to unfold. Like I know, like again, like as I said before, it's really a pity that you have to really know where to look when you want to find valuable people. So, but I'm lucky because I already kind of met you before this whole machine started. So at the master's levels.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy for it. Yeah, so good luck with your career, and I hope to hear from you in the future and see you maybe Forbes 40 under 40. Who knows? Like, who knows?
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe this is the things which I cared about before. Now I just try to replicate the objective content of the success of being on such a list and not being on the list. It's like in the past, I wanted to be, for example, in a partner in a big four or partner in a bank, or the management board. But now what I decided is just to replicate exactly the same things which they are doing in terms of complexity. So I'm just looking at something which is, let's say, successful, some kind of recognition, and I don't want that recognition, but I just want the content of that level. That's it. And
yeah, it's also there is a big difference between making a real impact on this world, like in any way, and being recognized for it. Like people who make real impact are often not the same people who are in the spotlight. So you can, if that's your objective, then you don't need to ever be in the spotlight. In fact.
Exactly, and look, for example, look at the academia, right? I mean, I would have personally more respect for a person who is not a professor, he's not in academia, but he's publishing through a foundation or through his own firm. He has like 100 publications versus a professor who is not doing that and is just teaching, for example, in some, whatever. Okay, he chose that, but on the research level, you really don't need to be a professor. You don't need to look at the PhD, right? Like, for example, imagine that there's a person who has 4 publications, but doesn't have a PhD. I think this person, perhaps, if it's the first author, is perhaps better PhD than most PhDs. Yeah. Right? And, so this is the theory of the closed shop, right? That, so I used to think like this, but I don't think like that anymore. So this, it's nice to have, I think the most important thing is to try to replicate the content of those recognitions. True. And if you get recognized, amazing. So good,
Yeah, I mean, then I wish you that, of course. Thanks. And very nice to talk to you, but I think the dusk is falling down, so yes, we should start moving towards the closure.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you so much, and have a nice evening, and thank you so much for participation and for your input, and awesome, and have a great evening.
You too, Natalia. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.